What's going on, guys? Welcome back. So today we're going to continue looking at the principles of the Constitution. We've already looked at Principle 1, which was popular sovereignty, and Principle 2, which was republicanism. And so remember, these principles are the building blocks of the Constitution, which are the foundation of the U.S. government. And so the principles are 7 pretty essential questions that were asked that are answered within the Constitution itself. And so principle number 3, what we're going to look at today are principles 3 and 4. Principle number 3, the essential question that was asked for principle number 3 was, how was power shared? Because remember, how is power shared? They don't want a king situation where the central government has all the control and all the power. They just fought the Revolutionary War to get out of that. And so how is power shared? The answer that the Constitution gives is what's known as federalism. Federalism. In federalism's definition is a system of government where power is shared between the central government and a smaller political unit. In the United States' case of federalism, that smaller political unit would be state governments, county governments, city governments, etc. And so power is shared from the central government down to the state government, and then the state government down to counties and even more. But the Constitution explains, so if we have, say this is the Constitution right here, right? The Constitution explains exactly how this is supposed to work. So the Constitution splits up the powers. They have the national government, the national powers of the national government, and then they give the state government powers. Okay? And so the national powers are referred to as delegated powers. These are called the delegated powers. The state powers within the Constitution are called reserved powers. The reserved powers are powers that the states wanted reserved for them. They weren't willing to turn over to the national government. The powers that they didn't want full control and autonomy over, they delegated to the national government, hence why it's called the delegated powers. And so that, when the Constitution refers to delegated versus reserved powers, it's nothing but national versus state government powers. Now, it also refers to some powers that are shared, and those shared powers also have a name, and that is concurrent powers. Concurrent being working together. And so federalism, principle 3, kind of explains how these two are supposed to work together. That each side has certain powers, and then there are powers that are shared between the two, so that neither one is necessarily more powerful than the other. They have to work together. Because again, the fear was that another king would emerge, this time in the United States. The best way that I know to explain federalism would be to think about two parents at a home. You have mom, you have dad. They share power within that household. And depending on which home you're in, depends which one is the central government and which one is the smaller power. But that's not a debate we're going to have here. But that is the easiest way that I know how to explain how federalism works on a smaller scale. Two people in a home, they share power in that home, but they work together. There are some things that are specifically for person A, some things that are specifically handled by person B, and then there are things that are powered and shared between the two of them. So that is principle number 3. Principle number 4, we're going to move over. Principle number 4 explains another question. And principle 4 explains how is power shared? Or I'm sorry, how is power divided? And so power is divided. The Constitution answers that question through what is called separation of powers. And the separation of powers divides it down into 3 branches. 3 branches of the central government. And that way no one had all the power. So there's 3 branches. No one has full power. They each have 1/3 of the power. And so those 3 branches are broken down from the articles, which we're going to talk about. Article 1, which is the legislative branch. And the legislative branch has the power to make laws. So Congress makes laws, right? That's Article 1. It then breaks it down into Article 2. Article 2 is the executive branch. And we're going to go over each of the articles more in depth. But it's all listed under Principle 4. And that is the executive branch. And the executive branch gives the president the power to enforce laws. And so the president, the Congress makes the law, the president or the executive branch enforces the law, and then the third branch which is explained through Article 3, that's the judicial branch. And the judicial branch, so if Congress makes, president enforces, the judicial branch interprets, or the Supreme, and that's the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court interprets laws. And so the colonies at the time, the early Americas, didn't want one person or one group to have the power to do all three of these. And so they split it up, do the separation of powers, and Congress would come up with laws that they wanted to put in place. The president would be the one to enforce them and say, these are the laws, this is how they're going to be enforced. And then the Supreme Court got to decide, are these constitutional? Are these laws violations of human rights? And so the early colonists didn't want any one singular person or group to be able to do all three. And that's why they have the three branches. And now when we get into the articles, we're going to explain that there's other things each of these three branches do. But in terms of how power is divided and split up, it's divided between these three branches. And to give an example was laws and how the three branches have to work together to put a law into place. And so these are our two principles for today. Principle 3, which is federalism, how power is shared. Principle 4 being the separation of powers, how it is divided. You do have an assignment for today. We're going to stop here before we move into more of the article or principles. Reach out to me if you have any questions about these principles, the first two principles, or your assignment for the day. And as always, have a great day.